Sit back, relax, and join William and Lee on their journey through the strange and mysterious world.
Okie dokie, and welcome to season 2, episode 17 of Strange and Mysterious World. Today we have a bit of a different one. We have William out in India currently. So what time is it there, Will? So it's 6:30 here at night. What time is it there where you go?
10. I mean, not 10, it's just 10.
10 o'clock?
10 o'clock at night.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
3.5 hours. All right, no, that's pretty cool. So now
Yeah,
what's your trip been? I mean, what was the plan? Why did you go to India? What was the whole reason for it?
Well, anyway, so you remember on our not our last episode, a few episodes back, we interviewed Bibo Dev
Mishra.
Sorry, Dave Mishra. Sorry, let's just say it again, cut that out. So a few podcasts ago, we interviewed Bibo Dev Mishra on the podcast about his new book, the Yuga Shifts.
Yeah.
And anyway, so like I've been busy making a documentary on the end of the world, and it fitted in so nicely with that. So I thought, geez, I better get to India to interview him. And so then I got talking with Bibu, and like we were planning the trip or whatever. And I said to him, to make my trip worthwhile to come to India, is there anything else we could do, a documentary or whatever? And he gave it a thought, and I gave it a thought. And then I said, well, I've been trying to make a documentary about the lost years of Jesus in India. And I mean, we've been doing, I think, like probably our audience is probably like been a bit annoyed at us, because I think the last 4 episodes have been about Jesus. So I spoke to people. I said, look, I've been wanting to make a documentary about this, and I know there's quite a few documentaries already made about it, but I wanted to do my own one. So I said, well, what do you know about Jesus in India? And he was like, yeah, no, I know quite a lot about it, a bit about it. Jeez, I'm like, it's so late. I'm like retarded. Can hardly speak here, Lee. It's not actually that late. It's just we had a long day, long 9 days. But so BB said, so he gave me a article he wrote about mudras, like how the mudras in Christian art,
The hand mudras,
like
the hand signals,
like a fit person. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, the
spiritual,
the gain for wealth.
What people call it here.
For wealth, the gaining for wealth, where you got to hold your hands.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
yes.
And then the main mudras.
Sorry, Lee, what are you saying?
No, I'm saying the main mudras that most people use nowadays is the one where you're holding all your hands, and then obviously you're doing that one as well. That's quite popular amongst the wealthy.
Yes, yeah. There's all those ones of like
Elon Musk and all them.
Elon Musk, and like the rich guys always holding that one with the triangle. You see that? But anyway, but the mudra that everyone knows the most is the yoga mudra, where you just hold your thumb and your forefinger together in a circle with your other 3 fingers stretched out for meditation, so it helps with concentration during the meditation. So people had a whole article about how in Christian paintings, how Jesus was holding all of these mudras, which was fascinating. Like I interviewed him about it, and so he was while I was interviewing him, he was going through all of them. But just before that, so before I came to India, every single person I met in South Africa that had been to India, they were always like, you better take Imodium. All they could say, before they could even say anything nice about India, they were like, oh yeah, you're gonna have runny guts, you're gonna just be pooping yourself like all the time. This is like, so like I came to India like terrified I'm just gonna be shitting myself the whole time, but it was completely the opposite. I was actually constipated for 3 days, and I was thinking, like, am I supposed to be shitting myself like the whole time, and here I haven't even had a poop for 3 days? Like, what's going on here? So then Bibi starts giving all of these mudras, and he's like, while I'm interviewing him, he's showing me all these mudras that are on all the paintings, and he comes to this one that looks like
The devil.
people that aren't watching this video, it looks like the horns, that you like rock and roll. It's like you put your thumb between your two and to the tip of your two middle fingers and your pinky and your index finger up in the air, like giving the sign of the horns. Anyway, so he said, in this interview, he's telling me like, this is good for digestion. So while I'm interviewing him, I thought, fuck it, I haven't had a shit for 3 days. Let me try this one out. So I just hold this mudra while I'm interviewing him for like 10 minutes. And believe it or not, it activated a TED.
Okay.
And I had to go to the bathroom like immediately.
Okay, well, that worked.
So that one worked. And then
so before we carry on now, so you've got
but anyways,
a guest sitting next to you.
I'm trying to get to Kiara. So
yes.
So Bibo says to me, why don't we get Kiara Windrider? Because he's going to be back in India soon, and he's written a book about Jesus in India called Isa in India.
Isa, son of the sun.
Isa, son of the sun.
Yeah.
And Isa is his Indian name, Jesus' Indian name that everybody in India knows Jesus by.
It's also his Muslim name.
It just worked out perfect.
It's also his Muslim name. They call him Isa Muslim in Islam.
Isa is also his Muslim name, but of course, Islam came only 700 years after him.
Yeah.
So I came to India to interview Bibu about the end of the world and Kiara about Isa, and also, but Kiara also knew a lot about the Yuga cycles and a lot about end of the world. He also had some really interesting theories about how this magnetic shift of the Earth's going to take place. And it all lined up with Bibu's calculations for the end of the Yuga cycle, coming out of the Kali Yuga and into the Dwapara Yuga. So it was just an amazing interview. So everything that I interviewed Bibu about, Kiara kind of confirmed, but in his own way of like not just a Yuga cycle, but there was this like the whole magnetic structure of the Earth collapsing that we're going through right now. That's why we see the Bora Borealis. Well, actually, you know what? Kiara can talk about that. So we've been going through India. We've been going to all of the places where Isa had been seen, or his journeys. So in Kiara's book, he gives a journey of Isa's life through India and like all the places where he was, and like all the documentation of like how he was, like what he was doing there, who he was with, like what he was learning. Other interesting thing about Kiara's book is that all the research that he's done through with all of Isa's travels and that, he's turned it into a fictional book. So you read it like it's a story, like a fictional story, but it's got all the information of everything that he's done in India from all of his research, which is it makes the book so enjoyable to read, which I really loved. And then he's also done 2 other books about he's done quite a few other books, but 2 of them touch on Mary Magdalene and Mira, the other Mirjan, which because he was apparently married to 2 women. Well, he's married to one, but he had a bit of a fling with Mary Magdalene. Anyway, sorry, I'm like not doing justice to the story. I think Kiara has to talk about that stuff. But what was lovely was that we went to the tomb where in Rosabelle, where Jesus is buried, along with a Sufi saint that's buried on top of him. Like so Jesus was buried east-west, like in the Jewish tradition, and then the Sufi saint was buried on top of him north-south, so it makes like a cross.
Okay.
And then there was like around the tomb, there's such heavy descriptions saying no photography, no videography, completely banned, prohibited. It's like so strict, but I've got my camera in, I'm busy filming everything, and eventually this one guy like came running out, and he was very angry and shouting in Hindi or whatever, and the driver that was with him, he's basically shouting at the driver because like and he's telling the driver like, don't you know any better, or can't you read the signs? And the driver said, no, actually I can't read. So anyway, We got in the car and drove off. But yeah, we've seen amazing things. We went through so many places where Jesus apparently was, and to temples. We went to a King Solomon temple where apparently Jesus had his inscriptions on a stone to say that he was part of the building thing, but we couldn't find the stone. And then we were just today we were at Hermes. Hermes, that because Nicholas Notovich in his book, we covered it on the last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, I can't remember. He said that he was in the Hermes Buddhist monastery when he saw those documents about Jesus. So we went to the Hermes monastery and we asked them for the documents, and nobody there could no one there knew where the documents were, or they said that, but they just directed us to all these books, because there was a lot of books in the bookshop area, and they said, yeah, you can read these. And then they had the whole Nicholas story in there, and but none of the monks or the lamas or whatever actually could verify it.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's my if you want to elaborate on anything there.
Well, the whole journey was about following the footsteps of Isa, as I'll call him, and not just him, but also other characters in the movie. So in the early Christian church, which was founded by St. Thomas, this was the Malabar coast, Kerala, Goa. And so there's all kinds of writings from the early church that even predate the 4 Gospels. So there's the Acts of Isa and the Acts of Thomas, which don't exist so much anymore, because when the Portuguese came in the 1600s, they basically took all those manuscripts from the church leaders, burnt them publicly in the middle of the square, hunted down anyone who knew the truth. So it was an inquisition like anywhere else in the Christian world in Europe. But there are some writings remaining which I managed to find, and so it includes the story of how Jesus, Isa, came to India when he was around 13, traveled all over the country on his way down and then up again through Sri Lanka to Puri, where he spent about 3 years as a monk, learning the Vedas, learning Sanskrit, the Hindu tradition. And that's where, guess who he met? There was an Adivasi orphan girl who had been picked up by the monks from the forest and brought to the temple to be trained as a priestess. And she was assigned to Isa to teach him some of the Tantric Kundalini tradition. And this was Mari, her name was Mari, and that particular kingdom is known as Magadha. So she became known later as Mary of Magadha, which in the Western church would translate as Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
So that's where they met. She later followed him when he returned to Palestine, became his chief disciple. Then the story continues. So all we know as part of the Western Christian tradition is the 3 years that he spent doing his mission in Palestine. Everything before that is truncated. Everything after that doesn't exist, because according to the Christian church, he died on the cross. So in the Eastern traditions, no, he didn't die. This was all a plot, a ruse to protect him from the priests who wanted to kill him. So it was basically a staged thing. He was hoisted up on the cross. He was only up for about 6 hours. He was given certain herbs, including belladonna, to induce a state of trance, which, along with his own yogic training, put him into a really deep sleep where he appeared to be dead. So when the Romans came to break his legs and to hasten the act of death before Sabbath, they thought he was already dead. He was taken down, placed in the tomb, revived with herbs, So he was wrapped up in the shroud, which was later known as the Shroud of Turin. So laced with all kind of aloe vera and different healing herbs. By the next morning, he had come out of his opium belladonna-induced trance. And basically, he was wounded. He was quite weak, but he was alive. He showed himself to his disciples over the next few days, and then returned back to Kashmir, along with the retinue of his disciples. So that's what started the whole diaspora. There were the tribes of Jews who had remained in Palestine, maybe just two tribes, Judah and Benjamin. And then there's the so-called lost tribes, the remaining 10 tribes who had been relocated to Afghanistan, to Kashmir, and thereabouts by the Assyrians after they were conquered. But there were all these wars happening in those days. So this is where they found their safe haven. This was known as the Promised Land. This is where Moses came and was later buried. So there's a lot of history there which has to do with the Bible. The place names are the same. When you look at Kashmiri people, the features are completely Jewish.
Okay.
So then later, through different transformations, it became Buddhist, then became Muslim. And now they have their own identity. So that's where Jesus returned and basically married, had children, set up his kingdom because his father was the ruler in Kash, near the lake Dal. The capital then was Srinagar, which still exists.
I'm still here, don't worry. What the hell's
Okay.
happened? Just hang 10. Don't know what's going on.
So there's a whole magnificent story connected with all this. So what we were doing is following the story as best we could. So we went to Pahalgam, where, excuse me for this, Pahalgam was the birthplace of Marjan, his Kashmiri wife. And she had grown up there. Her tradition was more shamanic.
Okay.
So that particular time, there was a lot of intermarriage between the Jewish tribes, or the Beni Israel, as they called themselves, the sons of Israel, and the tribes coming down from the steppes up north, the Tocharian people, the Sakyas, the Munis. So this was really, just fascinating to look at the history and then follow the footsteps. We spent some time in Pahalgam, had a magnificent swim there in this freezing cold river. The town still has a lot of history. People still remember the story. We went to Aish Mukham, where Isa had first come back with his disciples. It was a Buddhist monastery at the time, where his staff is still buried. We went up to the Takht-e Suleiman, the Temple of Solomon, which has now become a Hindu temple. So, that's what you expect. So there's, a certain sacred site is then taken over by another tradition, and then later another tradition again. But if you follow the thread, it's fascinating to go back to ancient times, to those, and you see the influences. You see the Hindu, the Jain, the Buddhist influences within early Christianity. Of course, the Jews were not able to receive this because they were highly dualistic. They couldn't conceive of the Hindu tradition, which is like God is within. You don't look for him out there, you look for him in here. And here's the techniques, the yogic practices that you can use to awaken. And that's what he was trying to teach his disciples. Some of them got it. So healing, self-awakening, self-awareness and enlightenment.
Okay, so let me ask you quickly. So I just want to butt in there quickly. Sorry, man. So when Jesus was originally born, we had the three wise men that came across from the east. So I'm assuming they came across from India, Kashmir, those areas. They brought through gold, myrrh, and frankincense. What were the so for in India or Kashmir or that area, what does gold, myrrh, and frankincense actually mean? So if you're giving it across
Okay, so
to
that's a fascinating story. So let's go back a little bit. So there was the story of Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. So he had prophesied that 500 years after him, the next Maitreya would come. And so they were looking for him, the oracles. So even today, when a lama dies, the oracles know where to look for the reincarnation. They're given signs to follow. And so these three wise men were actually oracles looking for the next bodhisattva. They followed the signs. They came to Palestine, to Bethlehem, put him through whatever tests they put candidates through, realized that he is the one they were looking for. So then the gold was basically a gift to help guide them through all those years. Because so remember that Jesus or Isa's parents came from Kashmir. They were from the ruling communities in Kashmir. They only went to Palestine in response to this prophecy. Another prophecy was that he was one to unite the tribes, the Hebrew tribes. So the 10 lost tribes with the two that were remaining in Palestine. So in response to that prophecy, they left, went to Palestine, but they had arrived there penniless. So this gold was to help them survive those times. And frankincense was the symbol of royalty. And myrrh was, I think, similar to frankincense. It was like the sacred incense to awaken the inner psyche, the inner spirit.
Tell Lee about the twin.
Okay, hold on,
this is-
before we get there. So right. So we'll carry on with Jesus quickly. So he was found, he was given because he's now the next Buddha. Okay.
Right.
He was left alone till 12, 13 years old.
Right.
Why that age? So when they came back to collect him, why that age? Is there something specific with that age that you've got to go and learn?
Well, one possible reason was that around the age of 13, Jewish boys were supposed to find a wife and get married. And of course, that was not his destiny. So he had to escape from that pressure. And it was also, that was the coming into age, coming into maturity age. So that's when the Buddhists came to invite him back. He underwent a whole series of travels through Persia, through Syria, Afghanistan, and even after arriving in India, from Takshila and the Sindh, down the coast, the Malabar coast, where there were a lot of Jewish communities, around to Sri Lanka, where there were a lot of Mahayana Buddhist communities, then up to Puri in Bihar, where he studied to become a monk, then to Varanasi, where he was preaching, but he was preaching to everybody. And the Brahmins didn't like that because, the untouchables, the women, they were supposed to be not worthy of these teachings. And so he got into trouble. He had to escape, went to Nepal, studied with the Theravada Buddhists. Then finally, as he was going up to Kashmir to reunite with his family, he met his yogic teacher, Chaitanya. So there's a whole tradition of Nath elders, that these are immortals. So his particular teacher was an immortal. So he had mastered his physical body, transformed it into a light body. And this is very much a part of the teaching and practice, not only in the Nath tradition, but some Kashmiri traditions, the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, back to the Egyptian traditions. So in those days, there was a lot of cross-fertilization happening, and this was what Jesus was discovering for himself. The Hebrew tradition was very, very isolated from the rest of the world because of their system of, God versus man. It's like God's up there, man's down here, and never the twain shall meet. So you worship God, you know, fall down at his feet. Later, Paul transformed Jesus's teachings into basically a teaching of sin and salvation, which is as far as you can get from his true teachings, which is about finding the God within.
Yeah.
So yes, so part of his mission was to bring together the truth from all traditions, and then share it in such a way that people could actually get it. They could actually become self-realized. That was the good news. It wasn't about hanging from a cross and being proclaimed to be a savior. And that came much later with the Paulists. So this set of teachings from the Indian tradition, the Persian tradition, the Buddhist tradition, different manuscripts that point to the other side of the story. To me, it's about really bringing together the essence of all religions, all traditions, shamanic traditions, Hebrew, Christian, even Islamic, because Islam didn't happen until 700 years after Jesus died, or after Jesus was born. But the Quran says a lot about him. He's one of the prophets in that tradition. They're very unequivocal, saying that he did not die on the cross, that he survived, he came east, and the Buddhist tradition says the same thing. So putting all these pieces together, following the trail, it's been an adventure. So that's been part of our journey here in Kashmir, Ladakh. He spent a lot of years in Ladakh also, up in the high mountains where the air is so rarefied. It's about 11, 12, 14,000 feet elevation. So you really get into this deep, deep state of consciousness. And many of his teachers lived in those elevations. So he was quite an adept.
Okay.
And some say that he did not actually die. He took the rainbow body, just like the Buddhist tradition says about certain lamas. And so taking the rainbow body means that you merge the physical body with your light body. And so the physical body
Shrinks.
can move in dimensions. So it doesn't need to die. So in other words, there are certain masters who are still in the same physical body as they inhabited 2,000 years ago. So it's very likely and very certainly very plausible that Jesus still, many people will claim that Jesus actually took the rainbow body, like many of the Tibetan lamas still do today, that his physical body still moves in time and moves in space and can appear to be very physical anywhere he chooses. He can show up right here in this room if he has a purpose. So if that is so, there are legends within the Hindu tradition of certain masters and saints who have maintained their physical bodies for all these hundreds and thousands of years. And he could well be one of them. So there's lots of legends and stories that, are fascinating, controversial.
Okay, so he went through to India. He learned what he needed to learn, healing. There's a whole lot of things that miracles that he pulled off, those kind of things. So he learned all of that from the Buddhist traditions, Hindu traditions, yogic traditions, and then he went back. He taught all of that for the 3 years that he was in Palestine. He went with Mary. From there, he had to get out of obviously Palestine, so they put on a whole death scene for the people to think that he had died. He then left. He went back through to India and Kashmir. But now there's a story. There's other theories now that go from from that area now where he managed to go across to Japan. There's some say that he went down to him and Mary landed up going to France, where the whole Merovingian line comes from, and that's still apparently alive today. Apparently, there's the whole bloodline of Isa or Jesus is still alive today. So, does that come into your ideas as well, or is it something different?
It does. Okay, so Mary Magdalene, Maria of Magadha, didn't return to Kashmir with them. She went on to France. She had a daughter by Jesus. Then, meanwhile, Jesus marries a Kashmiri princess, Marjan. They have children. The two boys eventually accompany their father on one of his trips to France and England. They remain behind. One of them actually marries Sarah. They then begin that lineage, the Merovingian. I can never pronounce
Merovingian, yeah. Okay.
And then also the Grail line. So the Holy Grail, San Grail, refers to the line. Meanwhile, he also has a bloodline in Kashmir. So there's two very separate bloodlines that do merge at a certain point. Even today, there's people in Kashmir who trace their family genealogy back 60 generations to Isa and Marjan.
And also the Cathars, didn't Mary Magdalene start that was the whole Cathars?
Yeah, the Cathar, the Gnostic tradition, exactly.
And they were the ones that kind of, the Cathars, I think, were the ones that were in charge or hid the Holy Grail, which is apparently the child, or if you want to believe that, if that's the kind of beliefs, they were the ones that managed to smuggle the child away for safety. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So Sarah lived with the Cathars for a while until she was maybe in her teens. And that's when Isa went back on one of his trips, found her, and they traveled together along with the boys up to England. And so that's when the story takes a whole different turn.
Okay. So now, how did you come onto this? So, look, the Christians have got the Bible, the old Bible. The Old Testament is obviously the Torah, which is what the Jewish people use. Then you've got the New Testament, which is a completely different book, because you can see the teachings that Jesus teaches in the New Testament is very different to what's going on in the Old Testament. So I think that actually testifies to what you're saying, because a lot of the stuff that he says in the Old Testament kind of relates to yogic traditions, Buddhist traditions, love thy neighbor as thou love thyself. When the Old Testament, it was never like that. It was like you either believe or you get taken out. That's it. So it makes sense. I would always separate the two, Old Testament and New Testament. They're two different beliefs, two different religions. Right. And I think that's kind of why also when you go to hotel rooms, you'll always find mostly a New Testament. You won't find the Old Testament. But now my idea, so now the Christians had their things coming through from Paul, because I know Paul, who was Saul, pushed his agenda, pushed it to what he believed it was supposed to be, because he had a vision. But how did you guys come on to the fact that, or to your idea that Jesus was actually had come through to India? It makes sense, but how is there documentation that you guys found, or is there somewhere where it shows that this is the case?
Yeah, well, one of my first book has a whole list of references in the back, which include Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi, early Christian, Chinese, Tibetan writings, even Vatican writings. So there's manuscripts that were confiscated, burned, stolen, copies of which remain within the Vatican Library.
Okay. Have you seen these at all?
No, I haven't seen those, but I know people. One of the books I have, Barry Page, refers to these. So he was given permission to go down and look through some of these manuscripts. So he did that. And I've seen, so part of what we were doing here in Ladakh is to try and find the original manuscripts, the Buddhist manuscripts, which Nicholas Natovich was able to look at and write about. They don't have, I mean, a lot of time has gone by, a lot of things have been stolen.
So it's kind
changed.
of it's tradition basically. It's kind of in the
Well,
tradition.
well,
Yeah.
the one Lama did say that was something we read. I can't remember. But they said that if we were looking for that document, it is probably up in the old the other part of the monastery that's
Sealed
like
sealed room.
that a sealed room that's like like you'd have to hike up the mountain for like an hour and a half to get to that part of the monastery. Yeah, so we didn't.
Yeah, and no one's allowed to go there. So it's like it's locked and sealed, and there's only one Lama who has the key, and he's not authorized to reveal that yet. So, but I have maybe a dozen books that go into some of the source material from so many traditions, which I, maybe at a later point I could share from those books. But what I've done with my books is to use some of that documentation and then just fictionalize it. So that way, first of all, the church isn't going to come after me. And second of all, people can choose what they want to take and leave out the rest. And then if they want to study the original manuscripts, there's a list of references in the back.
Yeah.
So it took me about 10 years to go through some of these source materials until I was satisfied that there was a coherent storyline to it, which complements the Western tradition.
But I mean, Leah's book is really amazing. The Isa, I mean, I haven't read the other ones. I'm really looking forward to getting into them. But the Isa one I read, obviously before I came here, and it's the story is it keeps you interested the whole time, which is great. So it's not like you're reading this
Document.
What do you call it? A scholarly like thing where you're just going through all this research. It's like it's got this really cool story, so it keeps you interested in moving along. And what's also really cool is it brings like so much wisdom. You learn so much about the teachings. And I mean, there's even like a part of where Jesus is learning Vipassana and even the techniques of how to do Vipassana and just the teachings of what it is to be human and compassion and to how to find yourself. And so it's like while I was reading it, it's like I was getting so like I was getting so sorry, I'm like losing my words because it's so tight.
Excited.
No, it was like getting so like what do you call it, where you inspired, like inspired and just like because it's like I was learning all of this like wisdom of like how to live life and like what life is and I just left with such a good feeling in my heart because like I felt like I had like a little bit of a mini enlightenment, reading this book because of all the wisdom that is actually shared in there. So when I met Kiara, I was like, yes, this is the gospel of Kiara.
Send the PDF file. I can send it to you.
Yes, but anyway, but the book for the people that are listening to this, the books are on Amazon. So please go to Amazon. It's on Kindle. Is it on Kindle?
With print and Kindle.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, and you can read them there. Okay. And also because he's also written 2 books, Homo Luminous and Gaia Luminous. Which one is the Gaia Luminous? Which one's with all the prophecies of the end of the world?
Yeah, that's Gaia Luminous. Just to summarize, it's basically the science, the metaphysics, the psychology of this shift and how we can prepare for it, what it looks like, what choices we have, the timing of this, the science, because it's predictable, it's cyclical, and that's what prophecy is based on. Yeah. So what can we expect in the next coming decade?
Okay, so I'm assuming
in
then
terms-
you're following the same as what Bibu was saying, and he said it was, I think it was the end of March next year.
I think that's one of the trigger points. There's others.
But I think let's keep that one for another, because that's another whole podcast. Because I mean, I'd love Kiara to go into the magnetic shift reversal thing, and also it's getting late. We've got a flight at 5 o'clock in the morning.
That's fine.
So, but also what Bibi was with us the whole time. But then when we came out to Ladakh, the altitude, he got altitude sickness halfway up here and had to and went back home. So it was a bit of a pity, because it would have been awesome to have finished the trip with him. And then just another thing was, you said about the rainbow body, but then we talk about the tomb. So then what's in the tomb?
So if it's true that he took the rainbow body, it's very possible that the tomb includes not his physical remains, but the relics. So in the rainbow tradition, when a monk would take the rainbow body, what would be left behind would be fingernails, a bit of hair, maybe a miniaturized version of the body. So
I've actually seen that. I've seen that there was a I'm trying to remember. There was a documentary that was on TV some time back where they were talking about, I can't remember the Lama's name. It was quite recent, actually. I think in the last 10 years. And he was actually, he had meditated. He's now on at Death's Gate, or he's at the gateway to the New World. And he had passed on, but his body shrank. It became smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it was like there was nothing left. So I thought that was absolutely astounding. I mean, how on earth?
Did they film the miniature? Did they film the?
Yeah, they had photos of it, and I look at, you can always probably doctor photos, but it's not the first time that I'd heard of something like that. Of where the body actually, you've got such control over the physical, where the mind is able to almost absorb the physical. Because I mean, we've got so much thought, like the tulpas. I mean, our thought forms and everything in the astral realm. It's a massive. I mean, anything we think of is there in the astral realm. We can make up the weirdest shit, and it will appear in the astral realm. And this is where this is why you have all these funny demons and all these weird things walking around, because of people's thought forms.
And all the different bardos are part of the astral realm. So
So now I'm thinking, if you've got control of your thought, if you had so much control, I'm sure the physical wouldn't be that much different.
Yeah. So what the tradition is, first you build a mind of light. So, instead of the mind which is constantly running around like a monkey, you create enough of a focus and enough of a multidimensional awareness that you can create what's called the mind of light. And then the mind of light creates the body of light. So you have the 5 bodies, the physical body, the etheric or prana body. Then you have the emotional, mental, and soul bodies. When you can merge them together through the mind of light, then the physical body can actually be withdrawn into this body of light, so that what remains is simply the remains. And then your whole existence, your consciousness transfers from the physical body into the astral body, and from there to the soul body. So consciousness is very fluid. For us in physical bodies, we've become so trapped in this linear framework that our consciousness has become very stuck in this little box. So that's what you learn to pull yourself out from.
So what is your knowledge on astral projection? So the reason why I'm asking is, William and I, we've been trying to do this for, I don't know, I've been trying for years. I managed to get it right once, but since then it never happened. And then I've got a friend of mine, Jacques, he lives up the road from us, and he's, and I know one of the phases of astral projection, one of the keys is you wake up paralyzed. It's that sleep paralysis. I know that's one of the stages. And he always gets to that stage and he's petrified. And I think from there, and I keep telling him, but you got to calm down. You got to calm down. But how does one how can one actually get it right? What is the proper process of actually getting to the astral to project?
So there's actually, I could share a whole lot about this. Maybe you could do a whole session on that sometime, but just in brief.
Yeah.
So you isolate your physical consciousness from your astral consciousness. You shift. So when you're sleeping, the physical body is dormant. Your consciousness is within the astral. You are the astral. The etheric body is basically, it's not really imprinted so tightly within the physical body. Now, there are times when the connection is very loose. So generally, after a REM cycle, the connection between the astral body and the physical body is quite loose. And so those are times when you can choose, if you're lucid enough to recognize it, you can shift your consciousness into the astral body consciously and discover that you're in an astral body. So you'll notice that you have the silver cord extending out from the back of the head. You see your physical body laying on the bed below you. And at that point, if you're not scared, sometimes people are scared the first time because it's so unfamiliar, then the less scared you are, the further out you can go, the longer out you can go. You can choose where you want to go. You can choose to go to a physical location. You can choose to enter one of the astral worlds. You can choose to travel with other people if you have an agreement around that. So there's a lot that can be explored.
And then a quick question. Why do some people see a silver cord that runs from the head to head, and some people see it running from the navel or from the solar plexus to the why would that be the case?
No, the silver cord connection is always through here.
Okay.
But from the navel, there's other connections which have to do not with the so the silver cord connects the astral body.
Yeah.
There's other places which can connect with the different chakras in the energy body, in the etheric body.
Okay. Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
some people wonder about that because there's descriptions of people leaving from the navel or leaving from other places.
Okay.
And also when someone dies, that's another story which I don't know so much about, where people leave from.
Yeah.
Generally, I would say people leave from here if
The head.
they're moving to into a higher astral realm.
Okay.
If they
From the
are
top of the
being-
head for people that aren't watching.
Yeah. So, but if someone is more attracted, or maybe if someone is stuck in the lower astral worlds, then they would find a resonance through the solar plexus, perhaps, because that's, they haven't really evolved to the point where they can connect with the heart or connect with the higher self.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then how do you get there? So I go to sleep at night, I fall asleep and I wake up the next morning. There's no ways that I'm waking up during a lucid or having a lucid dream. There's no ways. I mean, I've tried music, but I fall asleep too quickly.
So if you practice Vipassana, for instance, before you sleep, so do an hour of meditation with Vipassana, bringing your awareness from head to feet, feet to head, just being aware of sensations. So in Vipassana, the passage from head to feet is only contained within the physical body. Next thing you can do is pass your attention head to feet, feet to head, in your etheric body, which is slightly above the top of the physical head, slightly below the physical feet. So once you develop the attention in the physical body, begin to develop that within the etheric body. You can begin to develop that in your astral body. So imagine like you're inside this bubble of light extending 6 feet around you in all directions. Now you'll find that the speed of movement is much faster in the etheric body and even simultaneous in the astral body. Then you begin to unify those bodies. You begin to hold your attention within the astral body before you go to sleep. And then you're much more likely to wake up in a lucid dream, or you wake up after you pass through a REM cycle, in which that glue connecting the physical and emotional of the astral body is thin, weak, and then you can slip out.
She's leave from Jesus to astral traveling. Well done, man.
Yeah, of course, man. And then I wanted to find out, I know you were talking about, because I know, not that I've seen it, but I know that we all have what everybody likes to call auras, but I think it's these, like you said, it's almost like a bubble of light around everybody, which is, as you said, 6 feet. But does that change color? So I know when people say they see orange and blue and red, I'm assuming that goes according to motion, because that would then be connected to your emotional body, where it's giving off its emotion.
So the emotional body is closer in, but it's still within that 6-foot bubble.
Yeah.
That is more fluctuating with color.
Okay.
So
is that what people are seeing, the emotional body, when they're seeing the auras?
Yeah. So a lot of clairvoyants will see the colors, but what they're seeing is the emotional body.
Okay.
Now, if you're tuning into the higher bodies, what's known as the Vijnanamaya kosha, the causal body, that doesn't change colors so much, but it's the frequency. So a lot of clairvoyants are not able to see that because it's a much higher frequency than they might be used to. Okay. Once you get to that, it's not so much colors as tuning into certain verified frequencies where you're experiencing these blended states of consciousness.
Okay.
You're at that point, what you're experiencing is not just the personal field, but you're through that personal field, you're connecting with the planetary soul, the cosmic, galactic, universal soul. So,
and then the last question from our side, I know you guys are tired on that, but the last question from our side is the Om, the original sound. Explain that to me. So what is Om? I know everything is frequency. We know everything is energy. Om is apparently the original sound that was the beginning of creation, if you can say. But explain it. What is Om?
So in the Kashmir Shaivite tradition, there's the theory of the tattvas. So these are like the building blocks of creation. So all the way down to physical matter and all the way out to primordial beingness beyond time and space. So that primordial sound, Om, is the beginning of the original self as it enters through time and space into the act of creation. So it's still very, very subtle. It doesn't even translate into the elements yet. It's associated with the origins of time and space, which is the matrix within which creation can experience itself. All dimensions are held within this matrix. If anything can be experienced, it's within this matrix. Beyond time and space is that Satchitananda, primordial self, I am presence. And that's also the heart of all things. So it's not separate and beyond. It's at the heart of all things. It's the stillness within movement. It's the Shiva within Shakti. So when people are looking for enlightenment, what they're experiencing is that stillness within, that primordial consciousness, the self, the I am presence. It's natural, it's intrinsic, it's behind and within all things.
Can I explain how I was told by a yogi? He gave me the child version. I mean, that obviously was wonderful, but he said that if you had to cut your tongue out, you would only be able to make 3 noises. Ah, oo, ah, So that's like that's the sound of the universe, because that's like you like with a human, you don't even need a tongue to make those vibrations.
The most basic sound, basically.
It's the vibration that's within every single cell and everything in the world, and everything that has those 3
octaves.
Vibrations.
Okay. And then look, okay, no, well, that's awesome, man. I would like to sometime, if it's cool with you, what is your knowledge on UFOs?
What is what?
What is your knowledge on unidentified flying objects,
UFOs.
extraterrestrials? Yeah, what do you have?
Yeah, I could share about that.
Okay,
You
cool.
know,
So I think what we'll do is, because I don't want to have it too much of a jumbled. We're going to be chatting about everything. So I think we can end it there for tonight. That's awesome. And
Okay.
then what we can do is, if it's okay with you, because there's a few things that I've actually, there's a few viewers that have asked me specifically on astral projection. That was one of the things that one of the guys were asking me quite a lot about, because they said they were listening and they would love to understand it and get to know it a little bit better. So it would be nice to talk to you a little bit more about that and go in depth. And then maybe on the same podcast, we can chat about the UFO idea. You know what I mean? What's your ideas, and where they come from, whether it's a different realm or whatever the situation is, but we can talk about that at the next one.
Yeah, because they are related. Like when you move through different astral dimensions, a lot of UFOs are between dimensions, not necessarily physical. They can become physical, but they're not necessarily originating there.
No, that's awesome. No, that'd be fantastic. Well, William, guys, thank you very much, man, for your time, and I hope you sleep well, and you've got an early rise tomorrow morning. So,
we didn't get into Jesus's twin, but people are gonna have to just go and read Kiara's book. Kiara Windrider, that's his name, Kiara Windrider.
All right,
Just
that's Isu, son of the sun.
Isa, son of the sun, is the first of the trilogy, and then there's Miran, daughter of the moon, Elmira, child of the stars.
Okay.
And then there's also Homo Luminous and Gaia Luminous, which have to do with the shift.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome, man.
It's sweetly. I'm glad we got this one in, man.
Yeah, no, fantastic, man. Look, just don't. So I'm going to just end it off quickly. There. And then I just want to ask you, when are you? Okay, so I'll cut it off there then. And then when are you heading back? Well,
I'll be back on the 2nd. Oh, I'll be back in South Africa
next week.
On the 1st, at about 10 o'clock at night. Oh, actually 11 o'clock at night on the 1st.
Okay.
2 days time, 3 days time.
And Kieran, what is your times like? I mean, when do you prefer? Do you prefer weekends, weekdays? What is your schedule like?
Every day is a weekend for me.
Weekend,
unless I'm
every day.
So I'll be around for the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Then I'll be in Egypt for about 10 days. Then I'll be back in India.
Right.
And I'll be in and out. But if you have a specific time, we could set it up. Day and night doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. Awesome. All right, I've got to end off there. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. Thank you guys for listening around the world. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. We'll definitely get Kieran back on again soon for some astral projection classes. And we'll chat about UFOs as well on that. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. We'll chat to you guys soon.
Really.